Unless there's anything else with the Pokemon, we've got our next headline to move into. It's another card game, Magic the Gathering. We did just have a 75K standard open tournament happen in Chicago this past weekend. This is kind of impressive because you've informed me too. Standard is like the backbone of play for this stuff, and for them to have a total prize pool of $75,000 is huge. Big. Just show up, pay your entry fee of $150, and if you're good enough, you got a chance to win 15K first place. There's some luck that's involved, of course, because it is a card game, but even if you place 96th, you get $250 paying for entry fee and a little extra for you. Nick, you're bigger on the card games. Like you said, you're a card game expert. What was your vibe about this tournament that happened this past weekend?
So this tournament was super cool. Sultai Control, which was like the name of the deck that came out, and it was the only one for the most part in the top 64 of this version of this deck, and it was just under like $500. It's like $489 just to even play it. But it is completely different from the way a lot of other decks in the format end up running. And like this one, just to give you a heads up. This is 36 lands in this deck, and that's just a resource that you need in order to play cards, right? Mm-hmm. The next deck underneath it is 25, so it had 11 more lands than most decks. Like maybe like give or take like 2 lands, but essentially 10 lands they were over, maybe even 13 sometimes from some people compared to a lot of these other decks.
Other than the land count, what was special about this deck? Why do we want to spotlight this?
So it was land centric, basically because like it had a lot of cards that revolved around using lands or when lands come into play, stuff like that. Like a lot of creatures themselves, like when a land is put to a graveyard from anywhere, put a +1/+1/1 on this creature. It's 3 mana and it's a 3/3. And then it would be like certain cards that like mill the top card of your library. Stuff like that. So return all lands from the graveyard to the battlefield. So basically, like you're tossing cards into the graveyard as far as lands, and you're only playing 14 creatures. There's only like a couple spells. There's not many cards because half of your deck, more than half of your deck is just lands. So it's essentially just playing off of lands themselves, like when lands come into play or when lands are in the graveyard. And the biggest one was a card called. Oh my God, Terror Tide. Like Terror Tide's a really strong card. It's only 49 cents. And basically it's because I have give all creatures -X equal to the number of permanent cards in the graveyard. And lands are considered permanent. So you're basically like dumping cards to the graveyard, wiping the field, and then bringing all your lands back, and then you're casting humongous dunga creatures. Like I could see the deck strategy there. I could see the win conditions happening and rolling out with it. But with that specifically, why is that deck surprising? Because it's land heavy, but like, why does that normally not do well? Like you said, it placed top 64 and like you don't usually see it, or what was that about? It's not specifically like the lands, because like landfall has like playing around lands or abilities that involve lands has always been around in Magic. Like it's come out a lot more recently in the last like 10 years. But the real big thing is that the next, I don't want to say it's just not a normal version of Magic. It's kind of like an anti-metagame deck. Okay, where it's mostly metagaming on. Yeah, it's mostly metagaming on people with like who go low to the field, like go underneath the bridge rather than over it. Yeah. And so that's usually like pretty expensive cards, like the Shieldred card that I talked about, which is like $110. It's a 4 or 5, and it has an ability on it anyway. But
yeah, and you said
that's like the biggest thing.
And you said that this deck placed 64th.
So no, the Sultai Control placed first. That's the one who won the $15,000. Oh, it was the only deck that was running this, like in the top 64. So there's there might be like small variations that are out there that might be running like another color. But for the most part, like from what I was able to like look at, and I mean, there's a lot of decks to really like look at. There's like the top 64 end up being not really filled with the Sultai control.
Gotcha. I think I pulled it up too, placing first. And here's like the deck list and the side deck of what they were running. Is this the correct? It doesn't look like it has.
Let me see. Yeah, no, that's it.
All right.
Yeah, it doesn't look like much, right? Like
No,
it just looks like lands to you. Yeah, exactly. And so basically, like there was another version of this like deck that was in standard that was doing pretty well. And it was mostly just like, ramp, get a lot of lands, then go into big creatures, control the board. But this one just does it better than the other one. It's just better version of it. And it looks like somebody basically like took what was working and said, I don't like a color. And then just went and then just changed it.
Pivoted hard, yeah.
Yeah, just a hard pivot with a similar style thing. So
it's still kind of crazy too, because like literally initially they had a 12-1 record with one draw, 12-1. Let me go back there. 12-1. And then the deck only costs $453, which is pretty low for Magic standards, right?
It's about average for like for the standard. Could be anywhere from $300 to $500, but
all right, because that's kind of what we're seeing here in the top 10 list currently.
Yeah, it's like most of the time. Let me see. I don't think there was too many. Not too many cards that are really like super expensive for the first place deck.
Actually, Nick, take a look at what is it? Top 8. The first one, it was Sultai Emergence or Sultai Control versus Sultai.
What was his name?
I'm sorry?
What was his name? Brian Zhang?
Brian Zhang.
Different deck.
So like it's a different deck, but it's the same deck?
No. Like similar name. So like whenever the Sultai is just colors.
Okay.
So Sultai is usually the green. It's not usually, like that's what it is. It's blue, green, and black.
Gotcha.
Is what Sultai is. So, and then you see how this says Dimir mid-range, and number 2. Dimir is black blue. Azori is blue blue white. So that's what I mean when I said I know.
Yeah. No, I mean like it's very Magic the Gathering. It's very like we're wizards and we have specific words to cast the spells. But like that's pretty cool. I like that. It is like a code. It is a speak that brings you into the know in the competition.
There's lore there, just so you know. Like there's lore and people, which is the reason why those are like one of them, like black red, is called Rakdos, and there's a guy, Rakdos is his name. So like it has reason to it. And everything like that, and they're like, it's there. And half the time, I'll say I don't remember it, but I'll remember it if you like were to ask me out of nowhere. I'd be like, oh, it's Sultai. But if you like ask me on the spot, I'm like, I have no idea.
Right. And with that, I mean, that's any other notable things about this tournament? I mean, that Sultai won $15K for that placement, that deck. They're seeing a lot of prize pool. Like any other notable decks or plays that we were able to see?
Not specific, because I wasn't able to watch a stream of this one, just because it was a Saturday. I was watching some other stuff. But for the most part, it's the same cards that we've seen for the most part. A big one, there's just a card that probably should get banned, as it's in like so many decks. Mm-hmm. But that's I'm not going to speak on that on the actual thing. But there's just some decks that were there that ended up being like $300 that ended up being top 8 that were under the amount that people were really like are average, 340, 342. So it was a pretty accessible as far as standard is concerned, and that's only going to get better because it's every 3 years now. Does the format rotate? So it's pretty interesting to see how things like are going to parse out going forward with 3 years being like these cards that they're playing and buying right now are here. They're here to stay for a little bit. So
no, that's cool to see. It's cool to see that big prize pool. Do you know when the next big standard open's going to be, or if there's going to be another one like this year?
Not. I mean, there's got to be. Like we're on 2024. Not to say it's going to be 75,000. But standard is what Wizard is pushing for all the Pro Tour. So as we get the Pro Tour kicking, you'll see more and more tournaments, and that's where you can get points. You can make it to worlds. You can do a lot of fun stuff. And one cool thing, if people play card games, that they should know, if you want to go back to where it showed the whole entire like deck list, where it showed the picture of it, there's a card. Let me see if I can find it. It's called Fairy Mastermind in the second deck, the Mir aggro or whatever. And I'm only pointing out this card because if you want to be a person who is immortalized in a card game that you enjoy, Wizards of the Coast is a pretty cool way to do it, considering that if you do win Worlds, you get to get a card with your face on it and work on a card. So as you can see at the bottom, the world champion right here at the bottom, he's got his whole thing. Yeah. That's his card, and that's his face. Yeah, that's his face on the thing, and like it's a pretty good card overall. It's not as good in Legacy because of another card that came out from that they put out after this card came out, by the way. So it was kind of like a middle finger almost, but like that's neither here nor there. But
wait, tell me
you have a card.
Tell me that counter card. Tell me that card that counters this.
It's called Orcish Bowmaster. It's the second most played card in Legacy. Okay.
Well, I was gonna ask if it's like a rival to this this player. That'd be really funny if like you and I were rivals and we're enemies and I win, but then next year you win and you make a card that like squashes my card.
that would be cool. I mean, like this is one of the coolest things. Like this was around when I first started playing Magic, and then they got rid of it for a while. And now they're starting to like bring it back with like these last couple of years. This is like one of the coolest things. Like it's what get people out there to play. Like you love the game, you have an idea for a card, and you want to like try to win and get your card made. Like go for it. It's pretty cool.
It feels very 80s movie, very like
Wizard,
Game Master, Wizard. Like yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's really cool to see. I'm looking forward to learning more about this. I only touched on Magic the Gathering and card games very briefly, but 75K prize pool is pretty solid. And for top 8 to be bringing home like 10K, big thumbs up in the world of competitive esports and gaming. Good prize pools there.